Yo, what is going on, everyone? Uh, in the wake of the Modern Pro Tour, I want to play some more Modern. I also am not supposed to be like helping people with Standard right now, so like this kind of helps too. But yeah, the Pro Tour was pretty cool. I wrote a pretty nice recap article on that earlier this week, so you guys should check that out if you are so interested. But one of the coolest decks that I thought came out of the Pro Tour was actually played by Todd Anderson, Star City Zone, and he worked with Team Revolution, so that includes Patrick Dickman, who is the Tempo Twin, Tarmo Twin, and now Tasigur Twin, Brewer, and Mad Genius, and all that. So basically, this is just a Grixis deck that has the Splinter Twin combo and also some Tasigurs for beaters and this mid to late game draw engine. And the last version of this deck played Tarmogoyf, and Tarmogoyf is the best creature, right? He's so cheap and so huge, and those guys said, well, hold on, Tasigur might actually be better. So the downside is that it is statically locked into being a 4/5. But that was Tarmogoyf's kind of sweet spot anyway. It was like once you get to 4/5, like then you're getting a good rate on what's going on. But Tasigur's locked in there, so you're never gonna have like some 2/3 Goyf or 3/4 or whatever, this piddly crap. But the downside is that it's a legend, so you can't ever have two of them in play. But if you have one, that's generally how the Tarmo Twin deck operated anyway. If you have one, you're pretty well off. You should be able to use things like Remand, Lightning Bolt, your Pester Mite, Deceiver Exarch, Tappy, Untappy shenanigans to just kind of keep your opponent held down long enough for Tarmogoyf to kill them. So they are aiming removal spells at these things, so I don't think playing 4 is the worst. Todd only played 3, but I think that's because he's a coward. He did not want to play 4 of a legendary permanent, but I think 4 is perfectly reasonable. And he only had 3 Thought Scours. I had 4 just because I want to make Tasigur happen. Like if I'm going to put it in my deck, I might as well try to be milling myself and whatnot. So I have a couple more fetch lands, a little bit more graveyard mill stuff, and Thought Scour obviously helps out with your Snapcaster mages too. So basically I'm playing Todd's deck, but I made some changes. So yeah, Twin combo, Pester Mite, Deceiver Exarch. Either one of these things, plus a Splinter Twin, you make a copy, untap it, untap the thing with the Splinter Twin, keep doing that until you have Infinity Fairies and all that good stuff, and then you can just attack your opponent. So, the one thing that struck me about this deck is that they have 3 Pester Mites and 1 Deceiver Exarch, which makes sense, because this is a twin deck, yes, but for the most part, it's a deck that is threatening your opponent with this twin combo. But in the meantime, you're just nickel and diming them out with like Snapcaster's Bolts and chip shots from Pester Mites and stuff like that. And they're holding up a removal spell because they're just like waiting for you to go for the twin. And you just never do because you don't have to, because you're still winning the game by just dealing them damage and attacking them for normal. So Pester Mite over Exarch makes sense to the degree of like we are actually trying to deal them normal damage. So 2 power is better than 1 power, etc., etc. But none of the guys really killed it at the PT. I think Todd probably had the best record out of the 3 guys that played this deck, and I think with the proliferation of burn in that tournament, one of the reasons might have been because they had Pester Mite instead of Deceiver Exarch, because Exarch has 4 toughness. Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage. So Pester Mite, when you're trying to combo, is just a very easy target, and even things like an unlandfalled Searing Blaze are just going to kill it. Like, you breathe on this thing and it dies. So, maybe if the format is going to be composed of more burn decks, then you might want to play Exarchs instead. And I consider doing that, but I think that this deck is pretty bad against burn anyway. I could be wrong about that, but your mana base is pretty painful. You're splashing like all these random colors, and you have a bunch of dual lands, and they even played 3 Steam Vents, which I think is just kind of ludicrous. Like, you don't really need more than 2. But you have, like, Breeding Pool, Blood Crypt, Water Grave, Stomping Ground, all this stuff. So you're going to be taking a bunch of damage from your lands, and that's kind of unfortunate. So, like, maybe your burn matchup is not good anyway. So, I don't know. I'm interested to read Todd's report and see how he fared in the tournament and what exactly he played against and lost against and all that fun stuff. But anyway, if if we decide that we're going to play a twin deck with a fatty to actually clock them, I think this is a pretty reasonable starting point. Terminate is good against Siege Rhino and the like, so that's another upside to actually playing black in your deck, whereas like blue-red or Teamer do not have a thing like Terminate, unless you want to play something like Pongify, which I don't. So you have no Path to Exile, nothing like that. So Terminate is kind of nice to have. I really like Spell Snare. Spell Snare is great. Counters Tarmogoyf, Summer Bloom, basically all the combo cards. So yeah, Spell Snare is a good one, especially in this deck that is like a normal twin deck might be looking for something that gives them a little bit more velocity to give them time to, you know, find their combo pieces and whatnot. This deck doesn't mind trading 1-for-1, so Spell Snare I think is cool. And then we have another threat in Vendilion Click, a couple cryptic commands for when the game goes kind of long, and that's about it. 22 land, which I think is pretty normal. They had a basic Swamp, which I just thought was it was not good. It was not good at all. But so they have Blood Crypt, Stomping Ground, Mountain, Swamp. You're trying to cast Cryptic Command. That's kind of tough. So I added a Cascade Bluffs, which is always pretty nice. And I cut the Swamp because I just didn't really see a need for it. So mana base is slightly different, a couple extra fetches or whatever, but mostly the same stuff. So sideboard gets a little bit different here. We're gonna make this huge, so you guys can definitely see this stuff. All right, Todd had a bunch of counter spells. I like some amount of Thought Seizes, and there are plenty of reasons for that. And the first is that when you get involved in a counter war, you might not have as much mana as you want. So say, you know, Todd had a second negate in his deck. So say your hand is like 2 negates, a remand, and a cryptic, and you're playing against Storm, and they're trying to either kill you on turn 3 or turn 4, or they're trying to do something like play a defense grid on turn 2, and you don't have enough mana. Like say they're trying to kill you on their turn 4, your turn 3, so you have 3 mana, and you have a bunch of 2 mana counter spells. Well, you're going to be able to play 1 spell, and that's it. And then if they brought in something like Swan Song, Dispel, whatever, like they should be able to punch through you and just, you know, kill you. Obviously Spell Snare is the outlier there, as is the 1 Dispel. So those things certainly help in the counter wars, but you can't load up on 2 mana counter spells. And we're playing black, and we probably want to fetch black mana against those decks anyway, and our life total probably doesn't matter. So I think having the 1 mana Thoughtseize is generally pretty good. Plus, if they do have something like Defense Grid, then it means that all of your disruption is not hosed by this single card. Like, if you board into 8 or 10 counterspells against a combo deck, like, okay, cool, you have a bunch of counterspells. But if they resolve a Defense Grid, all of your cards are just basically useless at that point. So, at least, if you have a mix of Thoughtseizes and counterspells, you can Thoughtseize them on turn 1, maybe take their Defense Grid, but also, even if they land a grid, going somewhat long, you're still going to have cards that you can draw into that will disrupt them. So, I like having a mix, basically, and I've used this to pretty reasonable success in a lot of different formats. Legacy probably being the most notable one, where having discard and counter spells is far more effective against combo decks than just having only discard or only counter spells. So, I like a mix. I like another Vendilion Click. It seems fine. Just an extra threat, another combo disruption piece, so kind of functions similarly to Thoughtseize. We have 3 Ancient Grudges for Affinity, although Affinity did show up too much at the Pro Tour, and it certainly did not perform very well. So, is Ancient Grudge worth the 4th color? Who knows? Those guys also had a Vandal Blast in their sideboard, so they're going pretty hard at making sure that they beat Affinity. But maybe that's not necessary anymore. Who knows? And then I feel like the rest of this twin sideboard is just random magic cards where, like, you have a Batterskull and a Keranos, and, like, most twin decks have this where they have a couple 5-drop fatties where you play against something like Abzan and you're like, aha, I know you have a bunch of removal, I'm going to play a Keranos. And I'm not even sure that works anymore because they have things like Siege Rhino that just, like, kill you, and you have all these cards that don't kill Siege Rhino. So I'm not even sure Keranos is this big trump that it used to be. Maybe against something like Jeskai Control, like actual control, not like Restoration Angel, Geist of Saint Traft, Jeskai, but like actual control. Like maybe you can stick this and it actually gives you the card advantage that you need to break through, you know, their removal and counter spells, or you just nug them out with lightning bolts and whatnot. But either way, I am increasingly skeptical about these 5 mana cards. I think I would rather have a card drawer instead of these, because we have removal, we have counter spells, we have big threats. So maybe we just need to find more of those. We don't need to find like slightly better threats. I could certainly be wrong about that though, but it's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video is that I'm not super used to playing with Twin, especially Tarmo Twin and especially Tasker Twin. So I think honestly that this deck is more my speed, where like the full-on combo ones are pretty difficult to make those game-winning decisions, at least for me. But this deck more so just like errs on the side of like, oh, I'm gonna play this normal game plan, and then if I happen to draw my combo, it is what it is. We'll just, you know, try and make it happen, or we won't, maybe, depending on what's going on with the game. But like, I definitely don't like these 5 mana cards, but we'll see how that plays out. And then Engineer Explosives, just kind of a catch-all, probably another thing for Affinity, but also you play against like Boggles or, you know, just whatever, like Zoo. It's just a handy card to have in your sideboard if you don't know what the metagame's going to be. And then Sword of Temptation is a thing that doesn't get Abrupt Decayed. It steals the Rhinos, steals their Goyf. There were some like green-white little kid decks at the PT that Sower would also be quite good against. And a lot of the sideboard is like just making it so the cards that are already good against you are stretched even thinner. So like you have Tasigur and this creature-based combo, so they're going to want all their Path to Exiles. They're also going to want like Decays for Pestermite and whatnot. So now you side up to a couple Sowers, a couple Clicks, Batterskull, Keranos, Tasigur, so now you're super threat dense, and their Decays don't actually have that many targets, but their paths are super good, but they have to be very picky and choosy as to what they use them on. So I don't mind that sideboard plan. It feels like kind of bland, and I feel like you are to some degree just kind of like walking into what they already have and are probably going to bring in more of. So I would like to see something like a hard card drawer. Obviously, Treasure Cruiser Dig Through Time would be fantastic, but those cards are no longer legal. So maybe even something like Compulsive Research would be fine, but I don't know. So I'm pretty excited to play with this deck. Hopefully I don't look like a giant Mongo playing it, but like I said, I think this is the easier version of the deck to play, so here we go.